Hey guys, tonight, we wander into a mist-shrouded forest in 17th century Slovenia, where villagers once hunted witches beneath twisted oaks, and you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're at it, post your location and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where you're listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. I push past a curtain of damp tendrils, gnarled vines dripping with autumn mist, and the undergrowth parts like ghosts making way. The air tastes of cold earth and decay, carrying one of the lesser-known facts. During Europe's witch trials, over 40,000 people were executed between 1450 and 1750, yet scholars estimate tens of thousands more died in unrecorded local hunts. I remind myself of a quirky tidbit I once read. Some 17th century folklore claimed accused witches could speak to wolves, bargaining for safe passage through shadowed woods. The moon casts a sepia glow through skeletal branches, transforming ancient oaks into cathedral pillars. I clutch my lantern tighter, its flames sputtering like a dying heartbeat. Each step cracks brittle leaves beneath my boots, and I swear I hear faint sobs. Maybe the wind, maybe the voices of those lost souls. My breath puffs out in ragged clouds, mingling with fog that clings to my collar like spectral fingertips. I pause at a shallow depression where wild mushrooms cluster. Their caps are ghost-white veins glowing under the lantern's beam. Local herbalists once boiled similar mushrooms into sickness cures. Oddly, some believed they also revealed hidden spirits. I flick a cap aside, shivering as if I disturbed something sleeping beneath the soil. Branch tips scrape above me, and I look up to see a raven perched on a soaring bough. Ravens were common in early modern Europe. King James I even wrote a treatise on witchcraft in 1597, warning that ravens might be the familiars of witches. Tonight, its coal-black gaze follows me unmoving. I wonder if it's watching for me or watching through me. I step deeper. A fallen log bark peeled away by time reveals shallow carvings, crosses, spirals, and a crudely etched pentagram. Superstition says symbols drawn on trees could trap wandering souls. I trace the lines with my gloved fingertip. A flicker at the forest's edge, a movement too swift to be human. My heart hammers like an anvil. I tell myself it's just a deer, or maybe a forest cat, but the rational mind fights a rising dread. Suddenly, the ground tilts downward. I creep forward, lantern held low, and the trees open onto a mossy clearing. At its center stands a circle of scorched earth, ringed by 11 charred stones. Candle stubs, their wax turned black and brittle, are jammed between stones. I remember reading that villagers sometimes held trial by fire, requiring the accused to walk through flames unscathed as proof of innocence. None survived. I step inside the circle. The lantern's light seems to dim, as though the flames have forgotten to burn. My pulse echoes in my ears. I swallow, tasting the metallic tang of fear. A whispered sigh drifts past my ear, soft as silk on skin, and I spin. Nobody's there. Yet the circle feels alive, humming with the echoes of chants from centuries ago. I kneel to inspect the center. The earth is smooth and pitted, as if something was dragged across it. I see faint grooves leading from the circle to a narrow trail winding off between the trees. My lantern trembles in my hand. If I follow that path, I'll penetrate the heart of this witchwood, where legend says the condemned left their blood in penance. I want to flee, but curiosity propels me onward. I rise and step over the ring's edge. Each footfall feels watched. The trail narrows and brambles scrape my jacket sleeves. A sudden gust whips leaves in a frenzy, and I hear them distant footfalls matching mine stride for stride. I whirl lantern beams slicing through the fog. Nothing. Silence except for my own rapid breathing. I force one more step. The trees close in tighter branches arching overhead like cathedral vaults. Moss drips from limbs and roots knot the ground. Lantern light flickers against root and rock, creating dancing shadows that seem to stretch and curl toward me. I remind myself this forest remains largely uncharted. Early maps of the region mark it only as Vragova Gozd or Devil's Wood. That name wasn't given lightly. A croaking sound stops me cold. The ravens cry, no. It's lower guttural, as if the earth itself groans. I drop to a crouch, scanning the darkness for movement. A shape slinks between trunks. A woman in tattered linen hair tangled with leaves, eyes sunken yet glowing with furious life. Her lips move in silent accusation. Terror spikes in my chest. Accusers from 1695 return to claim vengeance. She steps closer, dry leaves crackling under bare feet. I back away, but roots tangle my boots. My lantern's flame flickers, plunging us into darkness for a heartbeat. When light returns, she's gone, leaving only damp footprints in the leaves that bend unnaturally backward. My lantern clatters to the ground. I snatch it up, heart pounding like war drums. I bend to steady my breath. The air smells of smoke and rotting wood. A shard of moonlight cuts through the canopy, illuminating a single word carved in bark: guilt. My chest tightens. I've read that early witch trials hinged on guilt, confessed under torture, and many victims named innocence just to stop the pain. My stomach lurches. Guilt for trespassing or guilt from the past. I swallow, taste bitter remorse. The lantern's light dances across the carving, then slumps as the flame sputters. Wind gusts, leaves swirl, and in the hush that follows, I hear the crack of a twig behind me. I don't look back. I pause as distant cries drift through the oaks, carried on a sudden gust that rattles the dead leaves above me. The shock of it makes my lantern bob, casting jittery shadows across the gnarled bark. You probably wouldn't believe it, but during the height of the early modern witch hunts, around 1650, court records show that villagers reported hearing the tortured wails of condemned witches echoing through forests up to 2 kilometers away, a phenomenon dismissed as animals or wind by skeptical magistrates. Tonight, I'm not so sure. Those screams swirl around me now, high-pitched shrieks, the low moan of agony, and mingled curses in a dialect I almost recognize from Slovenian folklore. I swallow hard-tasting copper on my tongue and remind myself of another odd nugget. Some 17th century peasants believed tortured souls imprinted their memories on tree rings, so every oak held an echo of history alive for centuries. I step forward, boots crunching on moss and brittle twigs, straining to pinpoint the direction. The trail slopes downward, and with each lantern beam I lift, I catch glimpses of carved initials dating back hundreds of years. AD 1678, SV 1692, scratched into the wood by trembling hands. My breath catches at a broader slash. Mercy scorched into sapwood letters blackened as if charred by fire. The path narrows between 2 colossal oaks whose trunks curve like archways. Here, every step amplifies the echoes, the cries ricocheting as if the trees themselves are amplifiers. I circle the base of the left oak and find a flush of tiny white mushrooms carpeting the roots Kundakepper local shamans once called them. Believed to sprout where a witch's blood had seeped into the earth, they glow faintly under the lantern's halo, and I edge away uneasy at how they seem to pulse in time with the distant lament. Suddenly, a sharp crack like a whip snaps me upright. Branches overhead twist violently, shedding leaves in a spiral that falls around me like a macabre snowstorm. I duck, heart hammering. The cries crescendo and then cut off, replaced by a low, grief-filled sob. I close my eyes, lean against the tree, and feel the bark's chill seep through my coat. The sob echoes from all sides, now an omnipresent sorrow, as if the forest itself mourns what occurred beneath its canopy. I force myself forward. My lantern's glow stretches ahead in a wide cone of wavering light, illuminating a flattened patch of earth where charcoal marks form a broken circle. Tiny footprints, adult and child size, lead in and out of the charred ring. Witch trials records detail how entire families sometimes stood trial together, and superstition held that only those pure of heart could escape the flames unscathed. None did. I step into the ring. The air feels heavier here, each breath a sudden labor. I bend to lift a fallen shard of pottery, a sliver of glazed tile painted with a red cross. It's from a pilgrim's badge, a relic carried by those journeying to stave off evil. Pilgrims to the shrine at Brescia often brought such talismans hoping to bolster their faith against witchcraft. Even the leaves here feel soaked with desperation. A whisper to my right, "Release us." I whip around, eyes wide, but find only empty darkness between the trunks. My lantern's beam catches a slow slide of sap down the oak's trunk, thick and sticky as congealed blood. I back away, nerve endings alight with fear. Somewhere deeper, the sob resumes, joined by muted chanting. Bind the darkness, free the damned. I press on, following a trail of stomped leaves. It curves around a cluster of birch saplings, their white bark jarringly bright in the gloom. One bears a crude carving, a hand with 6 fingers. That 6-fingered mark, Fletcher in some villages, was a sign of witch's imprint. Children born with extra digits were once thought to be the devil's own brood. Beneath that symbol, someone has scrawled in fresh charcoal, "We see you." Lurching forward, I nearly trip over an upturned rosary of black beads tangled in roots. The cross at its end is bent, tarnished with rust. Superstitious women braided strands of church beads into witchcraft charms and bizarrely fed them to chickens for divination. I rub the beads between my fingers. They feel hot, alive, pulsing against my skin. I fling them aside, heart pounding. Then the clearing opens before me, a shallow depression ringed by standing stones, each the height of a full-grown man. Moss and lichen cover them, but I make out faded reliefs, a she-wolf, a weeping maiden, a coiled serpent. This is a holy circle turned heathen shrine. The stones hum beneath my lantern's touch. I remember reading that in 1600s, Europe, public executions sometimes took place at ancient megaliths to harness the old magic of the land, blending Christian and pagan rites in a grotesque show of power. I step inside. The ground sinks slightly underfoot, as if the stones breathe. My lantern illuminates the mossy plinth of one, the face of a woman carved in agony, mouth open in silent scream. The same face steps into view on my peripheral, pale skin, hollowed cheeks, eyes black as tar. I whirl, lantern raised, but the figure flickers almost transparent, then melds back into the stone's relief. My breath hitches. Fear tangles with fascination. Behind me, the chanting builds a dirge of the accused naming victims, demanding vengeance. The wind picks up, rustling through leaves like sheet metal. I raise my lantern, high, seeking escape, but the stones press inward in the dim light. The woman's face on the plinth shifts, eyes tracking me. I bolt, tumbling out of the circle chest, heaving, lantern clattering. I race back down the slope, heartbeat, thundering branches whipping at my face. The sobs and chants fade into mournful echoes as I clear the archway of oaks and rejoin the main trail. I glance back, only towering trunks and swirling mist. I remind myself historical hauntings have left no footprints, only stories. Yet the forest has its own memory, and tonight I've disturbed it. I slow to catch my breath, listening. Silence thick enough to swallow a scream, then a low final echo, "Stay." Forever. I don't stop moving. I don't even slow down until the trees thin enough to let in the moonlight. Pale and cold, like skimmed milk poured across the forest floor. But even then, the silence nags at me. It's not peaceful, it's watchful. Like holding your breath, knowing something is listening for you to exhale. That echo, I'm still not sure if it came from behind me or from inside my head. Stay. Forever. It repeats like a memory, not mine. I finally come to a bend where the path splits into two faint trails, both old, both almost swallowed by undergrowth. One curves deeper into the hills, toward the rumored site of the 1671 mass burnings. The other leads toward a derelict chapel built on a Roman foundation. I hesitate, but instinct and the weight in my chest pull me left toward the chapel. There's a rusted sign leaning against a broken stone, Capellica SV or Magdalene, 1654. Barely legible under moss and grime. You wouldn't guess it now, but during the witch hysteria, chapels like this doubled as makeshift courts. Trials were held by candlelight accusations whispered from behind hands, and verdicts rarely involved actual evidence. If you were lucky, they hanged you. More often, they lit a fire. The chapel looms ahead, roof sagging ivy strangling its corners. There's no door, just an empty stone frame like a mouth hanging open. My lantern flickers. The temperature plummets. I step through. Inside, the pews are half-rotten, gnawed by time and something with teeth. The altar is scorched, blackened by a fire long gone. And behind it, still intact, is the mural. At first glance, it's just a crude fresco. Saint Magdalene, cloaked in red, haloed, holding a lamb. But her eyes have been gouged out, not painted, chiseled, as if someone thought they were watching. Below her, smaller figures writhe in a heap, naked, twisted, reaching up for salvation. Flames lick their feet. One of the figures stares directly out of the wall, mouth agape, one hand extended. Someone has scratched a single word beneath her. Resnica. Truth. I take a cautious step forward, and the floor creaks wood-thin and bowed. Another step, and a gust of icy wind howls through the open doorway behind me, slamming against my back. The chapel groans. I look up, and in the rafters there are bones. Not decorations, not birds. Long bones limbs tied in bundles with red ribbon. They sway slightly, clicking against the beams like macabre wind chimes. In old Slovenian folklore, red thread was used to bind restless spirits, or to mark those cursed beyond absolution. I stare up at them, stomach twisting, and realize every bundle has been scorched at the ends. Suddenly, behind the altar, something shifts. The sound is barely more than breath, a shuffle in the dark. My lantern trembles in my hand, casting long, jerky shadows across the walls. I step around the altar, slow, careful heart pounding in my throat. And there she is, curled in the corner like a forgotten child, is a woman face streaked with soot, robes, torn hair white as bone, and hanging past her shoulders. She's crouched, low arms wrapped tight around her knees. She doesn't move until I whisper, "Hello." Then she lifts her head and smiles, but her smile stretches too far, unnatural skin taut, revealing blackened gums and teeth filed to points. Her eyes are wide and unblinking, and yet, something in them is deeply sad, familiar. I blink and she's gone, vanished. Not even a rustle of fabric or sigh of breath, just absence, except the lantern. It flares suddenly bright enough to blind, and in that flash, I see the mural change. Magdalene's mouth is now a jagged black hole. The flames are higher. And all the painted faces, they're looking at me. I stumble back, nearly dropping the light, and trip over something solid on the floor. I look down and find a length of charred chain, heavy and rusted, half buried in dust. A trial relic, maybe. Or a shackle. Historical records mention a 1655 verdict issued in this very chapel, 10 women and 2 men accused of consorting with forest spirits and demonic wolves. All chained together. All sentenced to burn. And this chain, it's warm. I drop it instantly, backpedaling out of the chapel, the wind slashing across my face. But before I leave the threshold, something makes me look back. On the wall behind the altar, scrawled fresh in wet black soot. You came back. I don't remember doing it. but my hand is shaking and my fingertips are dusted in soot. I leave the chapel behind without another word. Outside, the moon is gone, tucked behind thick clouds. A storm is coming, I smell it. Ozone and loam. Distant thunder rumbles like a warning. I follow the trail down branches, catching at my coat, until I reach a narrow wooden bridge spanning a dried creek bed. Halfway across, I stop, because someone is standing at the other end. Not moving, not approaching, just waiting. Tall, cloaked with a hood that hides the face. The figure doesn't breathe, doesn't flinch. And though it says nothing, I feel words in my mind. You've seen too much. My skin crawls. I clutch the lantern tighter. Then the figure lifts one hand, slowly, deliberately, points to the side of the trail, and disappears. I walk forward, hesitant, scanning the spot. And there it is, a pile of stones carefully stacked. A marker. I brush away leaves and find a wooden plaque buried beneath weather-worn and split. Etched faintly into the wood, Pogublieni, 1671. The damned. I kneel there, pulse racing, and suddenly the air feels different. The pressure eases. The silence softens. Almost like the forest is relieved. But before I can stand, something brushes against my shoulder, fingertips feather light. I spin around. Nothing. No one. Just the wind in the trees sighing like old breath. I should have turned back. You know that moment when your gut tightens, when some primal part of you whispers enough. That moment came and went, and I ignored it. You can't unsee what you've seen, and you definitely can't outrun it once it decides to follow. I left the stone marker behind and moved deeper into the trees. The trail vanished again, either grown over or never there to begin with. And I relied on instinct, which, let's be honest, has gotten more people killed in horror stories than any villain. But I felt pulled, not physically but emotionally. That same hollow ache you get when you forget something vital, like locking a door or turning off the stove, except it's your soul you left open. I came upon an ancient grove. The air shifted damp. Stale the smell of soil that had cradled bones. A circle of trees loomed warped inward, like they were bowing to something invisible. In the middle, a depression in the earth, shaped like a shallow bowl blackened with ash. There's no marker, no plaque, nothing official. But this was the place, the burn pit. Records show that in 1671, 32 accused witches were marched into this forest and executed without trial. No confession, no names even recorded, just nameless sinners believed to have danced with forest spirits under the blood moon. Here's the twist, no one knows who ordered it. The church denies involvement. The town elders claimed it never happened, but bones were found during a landslide in the 1980s. Mass grave, all female carbon, dated to exactly the right time. The fire pit still smells faintly of burned meat. I sat at the edge of it, watching the trees, and I don't know why, but I whispered, "I'm sorry." That's when they arrived. Not ghosts, not like in movies. More like impressions. The air shivered like heat rising off pavement, and I could see them in the haze, women barefoot, their faces obscured by hair or shadows. They moved slowly, mournfully, arms linked like a funeral procession, and one by one they looked at me, not with anger, with expectation. I should have run, but I didn't. Instead, I asked them out loud, "What do you want?" A dozen whispers answered at once, overlapping in Slovenian, in Latin, in words I couldn't place. One voice rose above the others, soft, hollow. "Remember us." Then the grove trembled. Every tree around me cracked at once. Not from wind, there was none, but from something moving beneath them. Roots twisted, branches curled. Bark split in spirals like scar tissue. It was like the whole forest was sighing awake. I stumbled to my feet just as the ground beneath the fire pit sagged. It was caving in. I backed away fast as the depression collapsed into a sinkhole, revealing a black void beneath. And from that pit, I swear, I saw hands reach up, not grasping, not attacking, just reaching. begging. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened as the air thickened, filled with ash. Then something heavy fell from the trees behind me, thud. I turned, a bundle of rags and bone. No, not just bone. A skull, clean and white, wrapped in fabric that looked disturbingly modern. Something glinted around its neck, a rusted metal tag. Curiosity won. I stepped closer, gently unwrapped the fabric, and read the tag. It was stamped with initials MT, and below it, 1973. Not 1671, 1973. Suddenly, this wasn't just history. Someone else came looking for truth 50 years ago and didn't leave. I checked the fabric. It was part of a synthetic parka. Same forest, same pit. Probably the same mistake. That's when the wind picked up again. No breeze, just a gust, so focused, it knocked the lantern from my hand and snuffed the light out instantly. Total darkness, except for the blue glow behind me. I turned slow and saw the grove pulsing with an eerie blue light, like bioluminescence. Not from the pit, from the trees themselves. Their bark shimmered faintly, and across their trunks, symbols began to appear, glowing runes, etched in light, foreign and ancient. This is where history gets weird. In 1588, a Jesuit priest stationed in this region wrote letters detailing local legends of talking trees that glowed during demonic Sabbaths. He was dismissed naturally and later disappeared. But here I was, 4 centuries later, seeing those trees speak. The symbols weren't random. They repeated. One symbol, a crude stick figure, arms wide, appeared over and over. The witch mark, also known as the mark of the devil, though in pre-Christian beliefs, it represented something else entirely, the forest guardian, a protector spirit corrupted over time by superstition and fear. I reached out, hand trembling, and touched one glowing rune. A sound exploded in my skull. Not noise, a feeling, a memory, not mine. Fire, screaming, rope burning into flesh, children crying for mothers who would never return. I pulled my hand back, gasping. My skin was fine, but my mind felt altered, like I'd carried someone else's pain for just a second too long. The light vanished. Darkness again, and then a whisper right beside my ear. She waits in the hollow. I spun around, heart clawing at my ribs, but no one was there. Just the woods, still, watching. I grabbed my lantern, relit it, and didn't look back as I left the grove. Branches scraped at my arms like warnings, the kind that don't come with second chances. The path led downward into a hollow, sunken boggy, dense with mist, the kind of place you'd never find unless something guided you. And sure enough, I spotted it ahead. A house, or what was left of one. Stone walls collapsed inward. Moss carpeted every surface. The chimney stood like a gravestone, and the roof had caved in decades ago. But something had lit candles in the windows. I approached slowly. Inside, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. Frost coated the walls from the inside, and scrawled across every surface. Walls, floor, what remained of the ceiling, was the same phrase over and over. She was innocent. It was written in dozens of different hands. Some childlike, some scrawled in desperation, some neat and careful. All saying the same thing. And in the center of the room lay a dress, charred, torn, preserved perfectly in a glass case that didn't belong here. Modern, clean. Beside it, a journal. Its pages were fragile, handwritten in English. First entry dated 1972. It belonged to a woman named Margaret Tomlinson, a folklore student from the UK. She'd come to Slovenia to study witchcraft legends. She'd vanished in '73. One line stood out in her final entry. She visits me in dreams. She says I'm her echo. I didn't sleep that night because something in the house was breathing. And it wasn't me. I should have left that ruined house the moment I heard the breathing, but instead, I froze. My breath caught in my throat, ears straining to make sense of the noise. It wasn't loud, just low and deliberate. Rhythmic, like someone or something was lying just out of sight, inhaling through decayed lungs. The only source of light came from the dying flame of my lantern, flickering just enough to throw shadows up and across the collapsing walls. I tried to hold still, but the wooden floor creaked beneath my feet like a snitch. The breathing paused, then shifted closer. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Right behind me. I turned so fast I nearly lost my footing lantern, swinging wildly and casting a jittery halo across the dust. Nothing, just the empty room. But when I turned back toward the glass case, the dress was gone. The journal remained open now to a new page. I hadn't turned it. Written in shaky, desperate script, "She doesn't want you to go yet." Something very old inside me recoiled at those words. I don't mean some philosophical discomfort. I mean that my spine literally buzzed, like my body recognized a truth it hadn't evolved to process. This wasn't a haunting, it was a summoning. The breathing resumed, this time from the chimney. A wet inhale followed by a thick cough like mud shifting under pressure. I backed away from it slowly and glanced out the window. Fog had rolled in thick. I could barely see 10 feet beyond the walls. But what I could see was unmistakable. A line of women, dozens of them standing motionless in the mist just beyond the tree line. All barefoot, all staring straight at the house. And at me. Here's a historical nugget that suddenly seemed too relevant. During the peak of the European witch hunts, spectral evidence was considered legitimate in trials. If someone claimed a witch visited them in dreams or appeared as a ghost, that was enough to hang them. Hysteria weaponized dreams. These women, they weren't figments. They were the witnesses no one listened to. The damned that no trial redeemed. And I had entered their courtroom. I stumbled backward into the fireplace, yes, literally, and sent a cascade of soot down my back. The lantern fell from my grip. Glass-shattering flame snuffed. Darkness again. Except this time the room didn't stay still. From the corners, movement. Not footsteps dragging, like something pulling itself across the floor. I dropped to one knee, frantically searching for the journal, the glass, anything sharp or real. Instead, I found fingers. They reached up through the cracks in the floor, small, delicate, but unnaturally pale. Childlike hands, impossibly long, stretching like roots from beneath the boards. I scrambled backward just as one hand brushed my ankle. The contact was electric cold and hot at once. Not painful, but staining like it marked me. A voice followed. Not spoken aloud, but whispered inside my skull. "You brought her dress." It took me a second to understand. The journal. The case. That charred dress, it had belonged to the first witch. The one all the others were burned in tribute to. The unburied. The echo that haunted the others. She wasn't a ghost. She was a catalyst. I fled the house. I don't remember doing it. Just bursting out the doorway, stumbling into the mist, brushing past the silent line of women without daring to look them in the eye. The fog parted for me like a corridor, guiding me downhill into a ravine, choked with roots and rain. That's when I heard it music. A lullaby. Soft, Slovenian, sung by a woman's voice, rough with age but unmistakably gentle. And it was coming from below. I followed the sound through the trees, each note pulling at something inside my chest. Not fear this time, something else. Recognition, familiarity. As if the melody had existed in my blood before I was even born. Down in the ravine, half buried by time, sat a stone well. No rope, no bucket. Just the lip of it cracked and moss-covered, and inside darkness. And the singing. I leaned in listening. The words were clearer now. Tekle pogorelo srce ostalo. The girl burned, but her heart remained. The air above the well pulsed cold and damp, like it exhaled with the words. Another historical fact for your nerves in the 1600s. It was common belief in this region that witches could bind their spirits to wells, springs, or rivers to survive execution. Water was seen not just as cleansing, but preserving. If this was true, this well wasn't just a ruin. It was a tomb. I don't know why I did it. Curiosity, stupidity, or something darker. But I called down. "Are you still here?" The singing stopped. Then slowly a new sound. Climbing. Not an answer. Not a cry. Breathing. The same rhythm from the house, only louder, now echoing from deep within the earth. I backed away just as water surged upward inside the well, not splashing, not overflowing, just rising like a living thing. And in that black water, I saw her, a face, charred, hollow-eyed, floating just beneath the surface, mouth open in a soundless scream. I turned to run, and that's when the mist solidified. That's the only way I can describe it. It stopped being air and became a wall, cold, tangible, unyielding. I ran face first into it, felt the shock of cold slam through my skull, and dropped to the ground. The mist coiled around me, tugged at my clothes, my skin, as if trying to pull me back toward the well. Then something let go. I don't know if it was mercy, boredom, or a warning, but the mist lifted. I stood dizzy, my ears ringing, vision swimming. The trees were silent, the well still, the air warm again, but on my palm burned into the skin like a brand was a mark, a circle with a flame inside it, the witch sigil, not something from lore, something real, etched by fingers from beneath the earth. My phone buzzed in my pocket. No joke. After hours of silence, a single bar of signal. Just enough. I turned it on and pulled up the compass app. It spun wildly like the needle didn't want to settle. But after a moment, it pointed west, the way out. I didn't ask questions. I followed it. And all the way back through the forest, the silence followed me. Not a single bird, not a single breeze. Just the sound of my boots over dead leaves. And far behind me, the lullaby started again. But this time she sang my name. I didn't sleep that night. After reaching the edge of the forest, I camped under a leaning pine with my back against the trunk and a Swiss Army knife clutched in my palm like it could cut through whatever had followed me. The witch's lullaby echoed in my skull long after her voice faded. Sometimes I think the silence afterward was worse. Every cricket chirp sounded artificial. Every snapping twig raised the hair on my arms like a voice whispering my name. Over and over again. I don't think she ever stopped singing. I think my ears just gave up trying to hear. By morning, my limbs ached like I'd run a marathon in my sleep, which might have been true. There were scratches on my arms I didn't remember getting, and moss in my hair like I'd been dragged. But what really disturbed me was the sigil, still on my palm, still burned, and slightly darker than before. Witch marks historically were used in trials across Europe as proof someone had made a pact with the devil. Some were birthmarks, some just unlucky scars. But if someone pointed at you and said, "Witch, that's all it took," you were inspected, stripped, shamed. If you had a mark, it sealed your fate. Sometimes literally branding irons were used to confirm suspicions. These people weren't criminals. They were scapegoats in a system already decided. Now I was marked, and unlike the stories, I hadn't made any deals. Unless carrying that dress into the forest counted as one. I walked for hours following a dry creek bed back toward the nearest village. The trees thinned. My signal bars multiplied. A lone hiker passed me and gave a nod that was too polite, like he saw something on me but didn't want to ask. By midday, I reached the outskirts of a tiny town I'll call Zidani. The name's changed here for a reason. I don't want anyone tempted to go looking. It looked ordinary. Cottages with red roofs, a cafe that served goulash and beer, a post office no bigger than a gas station, and a war memorial in the center square that listed the names of 67 villagers who died during World War II. Here's your history bite. Slovenia saw brutal action during unearths caught between German occupation, Italian control, and fierce local resistance. Whole villages were burned in retaliation for partisan attacks. Entire families vanished. No records, no graves. The locals here, they still remember, but not out loud. I grabbed a coffee and tried to ask the server if there were any legends about the forest. He just looked at my hand. Not the cup, the hand with the mark, then said, "It found you," and walked away. That was the first time someone confirmed what I'd suspected. I hadn't just stumbled into a cursed area. I'd been recognized. A woman named Jana, older, maybe in her 60s, sat beside me with zero invitation. She placed a small wooden cross on the table and slid it toward me. "You should wear it under your tongue," she said. "Not around your neck. That's just jewelry. They chew through jewelry." I couldn't even fake a casual laugh. She didn't smile. The burned. "You walked in wearing her dress, didn't you?" My mouth went dry. "I didn't know," I muttered. Jana nodded. "Nobody ever does, but they always feel like they did. That's how it works." I asked her what it was. She took out a small black notebook and flipped to a page with hand-drawn symbols. Variations of the one on my palm. "They're not ghosts," she said. "Ghosts fade. Remember, these keep score." Then she told me a story that still makes my teeth ache when I think about it. In 1642, a woman named Emma was accused of witchcraft after a local noble's son died from a fever. No proof, just superstition and politics. Emma was a midwife, and too many babies had lived. People feared that. Life in the hands of a woman terrified them more than death. They dragged her to the ravine and burned her, but something went wrong. The fire wouldn't stay lit. Wood wouldn't catch. The storm came too fast, so they drowned her in the well instead. And as she died, she cursed them. "Not with vengeance, with clarity." She said, "Every woman you burn after me, I will welcome. Every name you forget, I will carry. Every pain you bury, I will keep." That was her oath. That's why the other spirits gather there. Not for revenge, for reunion. You see, not all haunted places are prisons. Some are homes for the forgotten. The forest isn't cursed because of her. It's protected because of her. Jana told me the sigil marked me as a bearing one, a traveler who brought back pieces of what had been erased. The dress wasn't an artifact, it was a summons. And I'd answered it. I asked her what that meant long term. She looked at me the way a doctor does when the chart looks bad. "You'll go back," she said. "Even if you don't want to. It'll call, and you'll hear the song again." Then she handed me something strange, a bone needle looped through with a red thread. "Don't speak her name, don't write it. But if you find yourself near the well again, sew your mouth shut in the dream. Not in waking life, just the dream. It's the only way to walk out whole." I asked if she was joking. She just stood and left. That night I stayed at a small inn off the highway. Clean sheets, locked windows, quiet. I thought I'd be safe, but dreams don't care about locks. I opened my eyes in pitch darkness. Not in the inn, not in my room. Back in the forest, naked, cold, kneeling beside the well. And beside me, her, the first witch, not charred anymore. No soot. Just a woman with long dark hair that floated in the air like mist. Her face was smooth, but her eyes burned. Not with fire, but with recognition. Like she'd known me since before I was born. She held out her hand. In her palm, a thread. The same red one from Jana. And I knew in that moment that the dream wasn't just a nightmare. It was the rehearsal. Next time, I wouldn't wake up. I didn't wake up screaming. I woke up silent, mouth clamped shut, jaw tight like it had been wired shut by fear. My pillow was soaked, but not from sweat. There were tears, and I didn't remember crying. And when I stumbled to the mirror above the sink, still groggy from sleep, I saw a thread. One red thread looped through my lips, not piercing skin, just resting there delicately draped, like someone had laid it across my face to remind me where I'd been. I opened my mouth and it fell to the floor. No marks, no blood. But when I picked it up, it was warm. The kind of warm that suggests life. That day, I didn't go anywhere. I didn't hike, didn't explore. I sat in the small inn's cafe, drank bad coffee, and tried not to check my hand every 5 minutes. The sigil was still there. Darker now. It looked like it had grown roots tendrils branching outward like frost on glass. Around noon, a man entered. Tall, built like a tree. Wore a hunter's jacket with a frayed patch that said, "Tolman Wildlife Survey." He saw me, nodded, and without asking sat down across from me. "You walked the Bruma path," he said. I didn't answer, but I guess my face did. He leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. "They're not ghosts, you know. Not like the movies. No rattling chains, no half-seen shadows. What lives in those woods? It's older. It doesn't want revenge. It wants to continue." His name was Luca, and he'd grown up near the western edge of the forest. He said his grandmother had once been called a keeper, someone who remembered the names of the burned women and whispered them during solstice rituals. "People think witches cast curses," he said, "but most just carried memory, and that memory built itself into the roots, the soil, the stones. If you stand still long enough in Bruma, you don't hear the wind. You hear grief." And then he said something that chilled me. "They say the forest only calls those it believes can carry a name without speaking it. But if you ever speak one even by accident, you'll have to finish her story." Apparently that had happened before. In 1971, a young German anthropologist named Frieda Blas had come to document folk superstitions in the Julian Alps. She laughed at the warnings, even brought her own Ouija board, which she used during a camping trip. 3 days later, she was found barefoot at the edge of the forest, babbling in a language no one could identify. The only word she repeated in German was "Zurückgehen" and "go back." She died in an asylum 6 months later. They found her final journal entry written in red ink, but the ink wasn't ink. It was blood, and the entry wasn't hers. It was addressed to someone named Irina. Here's your historical fact for the day. Slovenia's Irina Breznik was a midwife accused of killing a noble infant during the famine of 1630. The child had actually died of disease, but Irina had been treating commoners during the same outbreak, and that made her expendable. She was tortured and drowned, but never formally executed. Her name was expunged from parish records as a way of purifying the town. But records don't stay buried forever, and someone, or something, remembered her. Luca tapped my hand gently. "If you've been marked, it means a name found you. You might not know it yet, but in time she'll show you how she died, and you'll feel it too." I laughed. "Too loud, too sharp. That sounds like a fun tourist package. Come to Slovenia, get haunted by historical trauma." Luca didn't smile. "You joke. But trauma is contagious. These stories live because they hurt to carry, and now they live in you." I wanted to leave. I needed to get out of that cafe. The walls felt too close, the lights too bright. But as I stood, Luca added one last thing. "You'll feel her again soon, when you walk past mirrors or still water. You won't see her face, but she'll be behind yours, watching how you wear it." I left. No thank you. No goodbye. I just walked. The forest wasn't far, and somehow I found myself heading toward it again, not because I wanted to, because it was like my body was following a trail I couldn't see. I stopped at the tree line, just at the edge, the world behind me buzzing with the noise of roads and restaurants. The world ahead utterly still. Then I saw something, a figure not far down the path. She wasn't looking at me, just standing, turned slightly away. Wearing the same kind of dress I'd found days ago, black high-collared, streaked with ash, like it had just been pulled from a fire. Her hair was loose, long, unmoving. I blinked. She was gone. But in her place was something worse. A child's shoe, old, leather cracked, buckle rusted, half buried in the moss. I shouldn't have picked it up, but I did, and underneath it, etched into the earth like someone had pressed it in with bare fingers, was a single word: Irina. So much for not speaking her name. It didn't come from my mouth, but it was in my mind now, rooted and growing, burrowing under my skin like mold. I staggered back toward the village, clutching the shoe like it meant something. It did. It meant I was no longer a visitor. I'd become a participant. That night, the dreams didn't wait until I fell asleep. They met me there between breaths. And this time I wasn't standing beside the well. I was inside it, water rising, voices circling, hands pressed against the stone, hundreds of them belonging to the ones who'd been drowned, burned, erased. Irina didn't speak. She didn't have to. Because in that place, words were unnecessary. The grief was the language, and I was starting to understand it. The next morning, I woke up with moss between my fingers. Real moss damp clinging to the creases of my knuckles like I'd been digging or crawling. There was dirt under my nails. My sheets smelled like wet bark. I checked my feet filthy. My socks were gone, and so were the laces from my boots. But the worst part, my door was still locked from the inside. I tried to laugh it off, call it sleepwalking, maybe a leftover dream made physical. But something deeper in me, a colder instinct I didn't like listening to, knew better. I wasn't just dreaming about the forest. The forest was dreaming with me. Back at the cafe, Luca was gone. No one remembered him. The waitress said she'd worked the morning shift alone. When I pointed to the chair he sat in, she gave me a look people reserve for the newly insane. Maybe I imagined him. Maybe the story just needed someone like him. A local, a reluctant guide, the standard horror cliché. But I could still feel where his hand had tapped mine. His fingers had been calloused warm, a little too steady. I still think he was real. It was easier than accepting the other possibility that I had conjured him. You ever notice how the weirdest places on Earth have a way of pulling your memories apart and rearranging them? Like puzzle pieces jammed into the wrong shapes. That day I visited the village archives. Slovenia has an impressive tradition of record-keeping. Even through war-shifting empires' occupation, somewhere someone always wrote things down, sometimes too well. In a dusty stone building near the town square, an archivist led me to a room where sunlight sliced through shutter gaps like bars. She brought out a few volumes, handwritten accounts, parish records, court transcripts, all from the 1600s. And there it was, Irina Brezhnik, accused in 1631. Trial lasted 3 days. No defense counsel, no chance to speak. She was charged with 3 crimes: conspiracy and death by illness, unnatural communion with forest spirits, refusal to confess under pain of drowning. The last one caught my breath. They tied her and dropped her in the river. If she drowned, she was innocent. If she floated, guilty. I knew this ritual, it's infamous. Common in early modern Europe, especially during panics. Even England dabbled in it, though less than the continent. The float test was used to break the accused before formal sentencing. A perverse irony: survive, and you burn drown, and you're vindicated, but dead. But here's the part that stopped me cold. Irina floated, twice. They tied stones to her the 3rd time. Then the record stopped. No burial site, no death entry. She was simply removed. I asked the archivist about it. She didn't meet my eyes. In those days, if someone was spiritually condemned, they weren't buried. They were planted. What does that mean? They were taken to the Bruma woods, buried in silence, no prayers, no stones, planted like seeds, like whatever had been inside them needed to grow. Later that night, I walked to the edge of the forest again. Don't ask me why. Compulsion, curiosity, stupidity. It all blurs together when you're in this deep. I stayed on the main path, kept my flashlight tight in my hand. Every crunch of gravel underfoot made me flinch. But then I heard it. Not wind, not animals. A melody. Whistling. Low, slow, childlike. Like the beginning of a lullaby you only half remember. It was coming from beneath me. I knelt, pressed my ear to the ground. There it was again. A tune buried in the earth. It made my stomach twist. Because the melody wasn't random, it was one I'd heard before. In my sleep, I traced it back to a night 10 years ago when I was stuck in a hospital after a car accident. I'd been sedated, lying awake while other patients moaned through morphine comas. And somewhere down the hall, someone had been humming this exact tune. Except now I understood something. The melody had never left me. It had just been waiting. I ran, back to the inn. Slammed the door. This time I double-locked it. Tied a belt around the handles. Turned on every light I had. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I recorded myself. Propped my phone on the dresser, hit record, lay back, and watched the red light blink. The next morning, I played it back. First hour. Nothing but the soft rustle of sheets and my breathing. Second hour, I sit up in bed, eyes open wide, empty. I whisper something I can't make out, then lie back down. Third hour I stand, not walk, stand. My body rises like it's being lifted by invisible hands. I float toward the window, and then I speak clearly in a voice that is mine and isn't. I was not the first. I'm not the last. You've carried me before. I collapsed, no sign of waking up after. Just back to sleep. At the end of the recording, I do one more thing. I reach behind my head and pull out a single red thread from my mouth, not from my lips, from inside my throat. I wake up seconds later, gasping. It took me an hour to delete that footage. Even now, I regret doing it. But I couldn't let it live in my phone. I had this irrational fear that the thread would spread, that the phone would hum or leak that melody through Bluetooth, infecting every device I owned. One fringe tidbit for you. This isn't the first time Slovenian forests have been linked with red thread folklore. There's a forgotten tale from the Karst Plateau, where shepherds were warned never to follow animals that left red yarn trails in the woods. Those that did were said to vanish and return as mute husks, mouths sewn shut with fine crimson filaments. Yeah, sounds fake, right? So does moss in your bed and voices from the floor. But here I am, and here you are. I haven't seen Irina's full face yet, but I've started hearing her breath, especially near mirrors, just before the steam fades, just before my reflection becomes mine again. There's a cold spot near the base of my spine, and it pulses when I lie, which is why I have to tell you, I'm not alone in this room right now, and I haven't been since the night I said her name. You know that feeling when you're in a room and something's wrong, not loud wrong, not crashing furniture or flickering lights, just off, like the shadows don't sit quite where they should, or the air feels just a bit heavier behind your shoulders, like it's pressing. That's how I woke up, not to sound but to weight, like the ceiling was lowering molecule by molecule, like something ancient and quiet had just stepped through a door I didn't know was there. I didn't want to open my eyes, but I did, and she was there, sort of. Just a ripple, like heat haze in the shape of a woman standing in the corner of my room. She didn't move, but she vibrated, barely, as if caught between two frequencies. You know that trick where you stare at a single candle flame long enough and your vision kind of folds? It felt like that. I blinked and she was gone, or maybe just somewhere slightly else. When I finally stood, the floorboards under my feet were wet, not soaked, but slick, with water that smelled like pine needles and old rope. I didn't scream, I just whispered no, like that would work, like that would mean anything to her. I spent the day pretending to be normal. Coffeetown Square fake texts to people who stopped responding weeks ago. The sun felt like a paper light bulb. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched through my own skin. Every surface became reflective. Every puddle on the road held too much depth. Every window felt like it was waiting for me to look directly at it. I tried leaving town that night, not out of fear, out of something worse. That frozen instinct animals get before a storm. I packed a bag, tossed it in the car, and aimed for the highway. It let me get almost 2 miles. That's when the fog rolled in, thick, fast, low to the ground. It swallowed my headlights and blurred the road until I couldn't tell shoulder from ditch. My hands went white on the steering wheel. Then the lights on my dashboard began to fade. Not flicker, dim, like something was drawing energy out of the car. And then the engine just gave up. No noise, no sputter. It simply quit, like it was obeying someone else. I sat there, silence hugging the car like wool breath clouding the glass. I didn't dare open the door. I didn't move. I just listened, and then I heard it. That melody again. But this time it wasn't a lullaby. It was a chant. Soft, female voices, more than one, coming from all around the car. They weren't angry. They were inviting, like they knew me, like I'd been one of them. In early modern Europe, especially during the height of witch hysteria, one common belief was that witches could control the weather. Hailstorms, sudden frosts, or fog used to be legal evidence of supernatural interference. In some Swiss towns, women were burned for simply owning a barometer. I wonder what they would have done if someone had played them a voice memo of this fog. Eventually, the chanting stopped, the fog thinned, and the engine started itself. I don't remember turning the key. My hands weren't even on the wheel. I just sat there stunned as the car rumbled back to life. And instead of taking me away, it backed itself down the road, in reverse, all the way to the inn. It parked perfectly, right where I'd left it the first night. Lights off, engine dead, just like before. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat on the floor with salt around me. Yes, real salt, old trick folklore, whatever. I don't care if it works. I just needed something to draw a line, something to say. This is my space. I held a candle in one hand and Luca's notebook in the other. Oh right, did I mention I found it? Tucked under my pillow. I know I didn't put it there. His handwriting was frantic. Lots of arrows, circles, repeated lines. The ink got darker and messier the further in you went. Most of it was lore pieces of the forest's history. But one passage was circled 5 times. It's not about summoning. It's about recognition. You don't invite her. She remembers you. Another line underlined twice. They say she sewed her eyes shut before they drowned her, so she wouldn't see what the river became. That one still gives me chills. Imagine someone so terrified of what's next that they tried to blind themselves before dying. Somewhere around 3 a.m. I heard footsteps on the roof. Deliberate, soft, circling. I didn't dare look out the window. You ever get that instinct, that primal childlike certainty that if you just don't look, it can't see you? I held still. Eventually the footsteps stopped, but the roof creaked like someone was still standing there. I don't know how long I sat in that salt ring whispering prayers I didn't believe in anymore. Probably until dawn. That morning I noticed something new on the inn's front desk. A feather, not like a bird's feather. Longer, narrower, translucent, like it had been peeled from smoke, and tied to it, a red thread. I tried to throw it away, but it was already back on the desk by the time I turned around. I left it there. Later that day, I ventured deeper into the forest. Yes, I know, you're screaming internally. Why would you go back? But here's the thing. Once you've been noticed, really noticed, you don't get to leave on your terms. You don't exit the story. You finish it. You see it through. So I packed light, brought Salt, Luca's notebook, 3 candles, a flask, and something weird I'd picked up in the archives, a key. It wasn't labeled, but the archivist said, it opens a place meant to stay closed. I didn't ask questions, because I knew exactly where it went. The path looked different this time. Even though my feet followed the same trail, even though the pine trees stood at the same jagged angles, like the warped ribs of some buried creature, it felt shifted, off-kilter. It smelled older, wetter, like everything had been soaking underground and was only recently unearthed. The deeper I walked, the less the forest resembled a forest at all. The moss on the trees grew thick like matted fur. The birdsong was gone, replaced by a hollow whistling sound that seemed to come from beneath the ground. Like the forest itself had developed lungs, and I swear the trees started leaning in, like they were listening. That key I mentioned, it pulsed in my pocket. Not literally, but the same way you can feel a phone vibrating even when it isn't some ghost frequency tuned just to your nerves. I reached the stone marker by the stream, the one Luca described in his journal. A square slab etched with crude carvings worn smooth by weather and time. It looked like it belonged on a sacrificial altar or in a museum basement under lock and key. I reached behind it and found what I was looking for, a wooden trapdoor sealed flush with the forest floor. You wouldn't know it was there unless someone told you, or unless your fingers were drawn to it by something whispering your name in a voice only memory understands. It was covered in vines, dead ones, as if whatever had been alive here decided it was safer to let this space rot untouched. The key slid into the lock. It fit too easily. There was a satisfying click, not metallic more. Organic, like cartilage separating from bone, and the door swung open. The air that came out didn't smell like dirt. It smelled like regret. And then I started climbing down. The steps were carved stone, damp, worn smooth in the middle by centuries of use. I counted 13 before I lost count. The deeper I went, the colder it became. But not like outdoor cold, it was hollow cold. Tomb cold. At the bottom was a room. No, not a room, a chamber. Round, low ceiling, lined with candles in little alcoves, and they were already lit. That shouldn't have been possible. But by now I'd stopped asking how. In the center, a table, or something shaped like one. Stone, covered in runes, and resting on top a bundle of red fabric. A shawl. I didn't want to touch it, but I did. It was damp, and when I picked it up, the singing started again. Low, wordless, just breath and vibration and grief. I turned around expecting to see someone, anyone standing in the doorway, but there was no one there. Just the shawl, and a whisper barely audible. You saw what they did. Now you carry it. I don't know why, but I folded the shawl and tucked it into my coat. Maybe I thought carrying it would anchor me. Or maybe I wanted to prove I wasn't afraid. Spoiler, I was. So much. As I left the chamber, I noticed something else. Painting scratched into the wall. Crude but unmistakable. They showed women tied to stakes. They showed trees burning. And they showed a figure tall and faceless, standing behind them. Always watching. A little historical side note. Between the 16th and 18th centuries, Slovenia was home to dozens of small witch trials, often organized by local nobility. Records from a 1670 case in Velika Lašća describe women being offered to the forest to appease its silence. It's one of the few recorded uses of that phrase, and scholars still argue about what it meant. I think I know now. They weren't burning witches to protect the town. They were feeding something older. By the time I climbed back into the forest, it was dusk again. Time moves weird in places like that. The fog was waiting for me. Not thick like before, just curling around the trees in lazy tendrils, like fingers beckoning. I didn't resist. I walked, and eventually I reached the glade. Luca's glade, or maybe her glade. The trees here were taller, dead. Bark peeling in strips like flayed skin. No birds, no bugs, just air that held still like even the wind was too nervous to pass through. In the center was the old stone well, and tied to the edge, Luca's scarf, still knotted, still stained. The shawl in my coat felt heavier now, almost hot, like it wanted to leap out to complete something, but I didn't pull it out yet. Instead, I stepped closer to the well and peered inside. Pitch black, but not empty. There were eyes in the dark, dozens, wide and ancient and unblinking, and they were all looking at me. I didn't run, I didn't even flinch, because some part of me already knew I was part of this now. I'd passed the threshold. It wasn't about escaping anymore. It was about understanding, or at least witnessing. Something moved in the trees behind me, a rustle followed by slow, rhythmic breathing. She stepped into the clearing. I couldn't see her face, not really. It shimmered, blurry around the edges like she existed in multiple times at once. But her eyes were stitched shut, coarse black thread knotted like barbed wire. And still, somehow, I felt her staring at me. Not with anger, not with rage, but recognition. Like she remembered me from a life I'd buried under dreams and disbelief. She raised one hand palm up, waiting, so I reached into my coat and gave her the shawl. The second it left my fingers, the forest exhaled. Every tree groaned. The wind picked up in a spiral. The fog turned cold. She didn't say thank you. She just faded, right there, unraveled like smoke in memory. Gone. The well was empty when I looked again, but the forest still felt full, and I knew it wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't walk home, I floated. Not in the supernatural sense. More like my limbs had given up pretending to be solid. Like the forest had scraped off the top layer of my reality, and now I was made of something lighter, more permeable. Every step back to the cabin felt like slipping between dimensions. The trees no longer whispered. They watched. Each pine needle seemed to hum with static. Birds had returned, but only in the corners of my vision, always darting just out of sight. I didn't even bother locking the door when I got inside. What would be the point if something wanted in it would come? I made tea. Ridiculous, right? I could barely hold the mug, my hands were shaking so badly. But my mind craved ritual. normalcy, the illusion of warmth. And besides the kettle's hiss was the only sound that didn't echo through me like a scream. I sat down at the small table. Luca's journal lay open, and there new ink, pages I hadn't seen before, pages that hadn't existed the night before. I touched the edge of one expecting it to vanish. It didn't. I started reading. She came to me again last night. Not in dreams. I was awake. The fire went out, though I'd just stoked it. And then she was there, in the doorway. Her mouth sewn shut, her eyes stitched closed. But I still heard her. "Tell them," she said, not with words, with something deeper, bone deep, memory deep. I think she chose me, or maybe cursed me. Is there a difference? I'm not the only one. There's a ledger, buried with the bones. I flipped the page. A map, crude, sketched in charcoal, but unmistakably this forest. The ridge, the glade, the stream, and one more spot circled in red, the whispering tree. No other details, no notes, just that name. Of course I went. Wouldn't you? It was late, but I didn't check the clock. Time in this place had turned to syrup. The map led me northeast through a part of the woods I'd never dared enter. The trees grew closer together here. The ground sloped in unnatural ways hills where none should be dips that made no geological sense. And the silence was too quiet. Even my footsteps sounded muffled. I found the whispering tree just after midnight. It didn't look special at first. Just an old beech with its bark split open like it had been struck by lightning. Black sap oozed from the wound thick as blood. But then I leaned in, and I heard it. Voices, dozens, layered on top of each other like wind through reeds. They spoke in languages I didn't know, dialects I'd never heard. But the meaning sank in anyway. Help us remember. They buried the truth in shallow soil. She burned, but we endured. I touched the bark. It was wet, and suddenly I saw. I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was in the past. The trees were younger, the village smaller. A girl no older than 16 being dragged through the underbrush by 3 men. They weren't soldiers, they were locals. One had a bishop's sigil burned into his cloak. Another had fresh scratches across his face. She wasn't crying, she was singing. A melody I didn't recognize, but one I remembered. They threw her to the base of this very tree, tied her there, built a pyre of wet wood and prayer. Then came the fire. It didn't roar, it whispered, like it was ashamed of itself. And as the flames climbed, she sang louder. The tree screamed with her. Back in the present, I staggered away from the bark. My hand was smoking. Not burning, just steaming like it had touched dry ice. And something had been etched into my palm. A symbol, the same one from the stone altar. It faded after a few seconds, but the pain stayed. Deep in the joints, like something ancient had signed its name in my bones. Historical footnote for the curious beech trees have long been associated with memory. The word book even derives from beech in some old Germanic languages. People used to carve their histories into the bark of these trees, believing they would be passed down through generations of wood. What I touched wasn't bark, it was a library. On the walk back, I noticed shadows moving independently of objects. The moon hung low, bloated and red. Not a blood moon, just angry. By the time I reached the cabin, something had changed. The door was open, and on the floor, that same red shawl. I'd given it away. But it came back, and this time it was folded beside a bundle of bones. Tiny ones, fingers, and beside those a piece of parchment, with one word scrawled across it in smeared, frantic ink. Witness. That was the first time I wept. Not because of the bones, not because the shawl returned, but because I realized I wasn't being haunted. I was being recruited. They didn't want revenge. They wanted a record, proof they had existed, proof that someone saw. I burned sage. I whispered apologies. I left the bones where they were, because now I understood. Some ghosts don't need to be banished. They need to be believed. The days passed in a blur. The cabin grew colder, but not from the weather. It was something else. The air in the room felt heavy, thick with memories that weren't my own. I could feel eyes on me at all times, But whenever I looked, nothing was there. Still, the weight was undeniable. At night, the voices returned, soft at first like the rustling of leaves outside the window. But soon they grew louder, more insistent. Whispers in languages that no longer had names. Sometimes I could almost make out their words. "They found us. It's too late. You are not safe." I hadn't told anyone about the journal or the map. Not yet. I didn't know how. Who could understand? Who would believe me? But I had to go back to the forest. I had to. The whispering tree called me. It wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was something deeper. The truth was there, and it wanted to be uncovered. So one night, under a sky darker than I'd ever seen, I returned. My hands were shaking as I pulled the map from my bag, the edges frayed and worn from my earlier trek. This time, though, the map had changed. The circle around the whispering tree had expanded, growing wider, almost as if it were alive, shifting to encompass the surrounding land. I followed the marked path, the one I'd walked before. It felt different now. The trees, the earth beneath my boots. It was like the world itself had become an extension of the tree bending to its will. And then I heard it, a low, keening wail, a sound like nothing I'd ever heard before. It didn't belong to any living creature. It was like the forest itself was mourning, crying for something that had been lost. I ran towards the sound, faster than I should have, through thorns and brambles that should have torn me apart. But I didn't feel the pain anymore. All I felt was the pull. When I reached the clearing, the tree was different. Larger, more gnarled. Its bark had become twisted like something was trying to break through from the inside. The air around it was thick with smoke, though there was no fire. I approached cautiously, the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes pressing down on me. That's when I saw it. At the base of the tree, just like in the vision, a body. But this wasn't just any body. It was the same girl from the memory, the one who had been burned at the stake. But now her body was alive. Or, not alive, but moving, twitching as though she were trying to escape the bindings of her own fate. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. She looked up at me with empty, stitched eyes. Her mouth, sewn shut, trembled as if trying to say something. The air around her shimmered, and the forest held its breath. And then something else happened. The ground beneath me cracked open. Slowly, painfully, like something ancient and powerful was pushing its way back into the world. The bones, hundreds of them. They emerged from the earth, scattered in all directions, as though they had been waiting for centuries, buried deep beneath the roots of the trees. The girl's hand stretched out toward me. I couldn't look away. I was paralyzed with fear, but there was something else now. A strange sense of recognition, like I had been here before. Like this moment had already happened. The girl's fingers brushed against mine, and everything stopped. The ground, the wind, the trees, the entire forest was still. I could feel the pulse of the earth beneath me, slow and steady. Then the whispers came again, louder, now more desperate. "She chose you." It wasn't the forest that spoke. It was her. Her voice filled my head, but it wasn't with words. It was a feeling, a flood of memories, of fire, of betrayal, of being bound to this place. I understood now. She wasn't just a ghost. She wasn't a victim. She was a guardian, a spirit trapped between worlds, holding the balance of something far darker than I could imagine. She was not alone. The others were here. The ones who had been buried, forgotten by time, waiting for someone to remember them. Waiting for someone to carry their stories. But there was a price. The air around me shifted and the trees groaned with ancient sorrow. The branches bent, almost touching the ground. Their shadows reached out like fingers, and I could feel them curling around me, tightening. I knew what it meant. I had been chosen. The girl's hand, once weak, now gripped mine with an iron strength. Her lips moved, the thread of her mouth stretching as she tried to speak again. And then it came to me, clear as day, straight to my soul. "You will tell them." The weight of her words crashed into me. I could feel the forest shift the roots, stretching as if the very earth was reaching for me. The trees closed in, and for a moment I thought I might be swallowed whole. But then nothing. The stillness returned, and the world snapped back to what it was before. No more whispers, no more eerie eyes, only the sound of the wind. But I knew better now. I wasn't alone. They were with me, watching, waiting, and I was going to tell their story, whether I wanted to or not. The journey back was a blur, but it wasn't the kind of blur that numbs you to your surroundings. No, this one felt sharp, as though every moment I spent in that cursed forest was being etched into my memory, burning itself into my soul. The air felt different now, charged. The whispers were gone, but they lingered in my thoughts, as if I could still hear them if I tried hard enough. I knew I couldn't go back to the cabin, not after what I'd seen, not after what had touched me. I tried to shake the feeling off, but there was no escaping it. I couldn't ignore the girl's voice in my head, nor the eerie sense that something had changed forever. I wasn't sure what, but everything around me seemed to have shifted. When I got back to my truck, I slammed the door shut, almost as if I was closing a coffin lid. I needed to leave. Now, no more staying in that cursed place. But as I started the engine and turned the truck toward the highway, I could feel the weight of the forest pressing down on me, like an invisible hand on my chest. My eyes flickered toward the rearview mirror, but nothing was there, just the darkness of the empty road stretching ahead of me. I drove for hours, not knowing exactly where I was going, just needing to get away. The low rumble of the truck's engine should have been a comforting sound, but it felt like a ticking clock counting down the moments before something terrible would happen. By the time the sun was starting to rise, I was back on familiar ground, far from the forest, far from the haunting whispers and the girl in the woods. I felt a momentary sense of relief. The world felt quieter, safer somehow. But I knew better. The curse wasn't something you could outrun. As I passed through a small town on the outskirts of the forest, I noticed something strange. A man stood on the side of the road, his back turned toward me. He was dressed in old tattered clothes that looked like they belonged to a time long gone. He wasn't facing me, but I could feel his gaze, as if he was watching me in the rearview mirror. His head didn't move, but his presence seemed to follow me as I drove past. It was only a brief moment, but it sent a chill down my spine. The man didn't look normal, not by any stretch of the imagination. He had a hollow, almost skeletal look to him, as though his body was nothing but an empty shell. And yet when I tried to shake the image from my mind, something inside me knew that he wasn't just a figment of my imagination. He had been waiting for me. The question hung in the air as I drove through the town, but there were no answers. I didn't dare stop, didn't dare ask anyone. There was something wrong about this place, something that felt ancient and restless. I didn't sleep for days after that. I kept moving, staying in cheap motels, never staying too long in one place. I wanted to outrun whatever was chasing me, but no matter how far I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest and the voices were never far behind. It was as though the spirits of the place had followed me, attached themselves to my very soul. It wasn't long before strange things began happening. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to find my room colder than it should be. The lights would flicker, and shadows would stretch across the walls, as though something was creeping just out of view. The whispers would come faint at first, like the rustle of paper, but growing louder each time. Sometimes I'd hear them calling my name. Other times they'd whisper in languages I couldn't understand. And then came the dreams. I'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, my heart racing. In those dreams, I was back in the forest, walking toward the whispering tree, with the girl's hand reaching out to me. I could feel the ground shifting beneath my feet, could feel the ancient power of the place trying to pull me under. Every time I tried to run, something would grab me, pulling me back toward the tree. One night I had the dream again. But this time I didn't wake up. I was there standing beneath the twisted, gnarled branches of the tree, the air thick with smoke and the stench of decay. The girl was there, her stitched mouth now open wide, her eyes pleading with me. And as she reached for me, I felt something deep within me stir. Something ancient, something dark. I realized then that I was never going to escape. I had become a part of the forest, a part of the story that had been written long before I ever stepped foot in that cursed land. The whispering tree had claimed me, and now I would tell its story. Not by choice, but by necessity. The thing about curses is that they don't let go easily. And when you're chosen, you don't get to run. The forest owns you, whether you like it or not. I had tried to escape, but the truth was, I was never meant to leave. The girl's whisper echoed in my mind once more. "You will tell them." And somehow deep down I knew it was true. I was part of the forest now, and the forest was part of me. Time passed in a haze. I stopped counting the days, weeks, or months. I was no longer sure if I was moving forward or if I was simply existing in a loop, a never-ending cycle that had begun the moment I stepped into that cursed forest. The boundaries between dreams and reality grew blurry. The whispers never stopped. They followed me everywhere I went, curling around me like tendrils, invading my every thought. The worst part, I could feel the forest calling me back. It wasn't just a physical place anymore. It was something embedded in my mind, a constant tug at the back of my consciousness. I had become a prisoner in my own life, held captive by the memory of the whispering tree and the girl who had been waiting for me. It felt like the longer I stayed away, the stronger the pull became, as if the forest itself was growing impatient, demanding my return. But I resisted. At first, at least. I kept moving, trying to outrun the madness. I'd sleep in motels or sometimes in my truck, always on the move, always looking over my shoulder, feeling eyes watching me from the shadows. I couldn't trust anyone, not anymore. People would look at me strangely, as though they could see the change in me, as though they could sense the darkness that had taken root inside me. I had become a ghost, a shell of the person I once was. And then one night, after months of trying to outrun the inevitable, I received a letter. The envelope was old, the paper yellowed with age, and the handwriting was unfamiliar. Yet somehow I knew exactly who it was from. I knew it was from the forest, from the girl. The letter felt alive in my hands, almost as if it were breathing, and I couldn't help but feel the weight of it, the weight of the curse pressing down on me once more. With trembling fingers, I opened it. "Come back, you know where." Those words were simple, but they were enough to send a shock through my spine. I didn't need any further explanation. I knew what it meant. The forest was calling me home, and I could feel its reach stretching out from miles away. I had no choice but to obey. The letter had sealed my fate. I wasn't surprised when the truck automatically turned onto the road that led back toward the forest. It was like my body was already moving before my mind could fully catch up. Every muscle in my body screamed for me to stop, to turn around, but I couldn't. I was already lost. As I drove deeper into the wilderness, I began to see signs of the forest's presence once again. The trees, which I had tried so desperately to avoid, began to close in on me. The roads became narrower, the air heavier, as if the land itself was suffocating me. The fog that had once shrouded the path was back, rolling in thick and fast, clinging to the truck like a blanket of dread. I arrived at the edge of the forest, just as the sun dipped below the horizon. The darkness fell quickly, and with it the feeling of isolation intensified. It was as if the entire world had fallen away, leaving me alone with the forest and its whispers. The eerie hum of the wind rustling through the branches was the only sound I could hear, and it felt almost like a voice, one that beckoned me, urged me to step further into the shadows. I parked the truck and stepped out. My boots sank into the soft, wet earth as I made my way toward the trees. I didn't know why I was doing this. I didn't even know if I wanted to. But the pull was undeniable, the force driving me forward too powerful to resist. I could feel the presence of something watching me, 1,000 unseen eyes following my every move. The feeling was suffocating, as though the forest itself was alive, conscious, aware of me. But I couldn't stop. I had to go further. I had to see it through. The path wound deeper into the woods, and I followed it, my heart pounding in my chest. As I walked, the whispers began again, soft at first, then growing louder, clearer. They weren't in any language I recognized, but somehow I understood. It was a language older than words, a language of the forest itself, a language of spirits. The trees seemed to part for me as I reached the clearing, and there in the center stood the whispering tree. It was more grotesque than I remembered, its twisted branches reaching up like gnarled hands, its bark dark and warped. The air around it felt heavy, charged with a dark energy. And standing beneath it, just as she had been the first time I saw her, was the girl. Her face was still stitched shut, her eyes still full of that same haunting sadness. She reached out for me again, her hand trembling as it beckoned me closer. I didn't want to go to her, didn't want to take her hand, but I was drawn to her as if my soul was bound to hers. This was it. This was what I had been running from all along. The moment of truth had arrived, and just as I stepped forward, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I froze. The chill of it crept up my spine, spreading through my body. I turned slowly, dreading what I might see, but when I did, I was met with the pale, hollow face of the man I had seen on the side of the road all those months ago. His eyes bore into mine, and his lips, cracked and dry, whispered the words that I had feared more than anything else. "You're one of them now." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, wrapping around me like a noose. "You're one of them now." The man's voice, though barely a whisper, echoed inside my skull, sending a shiver down my spine. I couldn't tear my gaze away from his hollow eyes, his weathered face like something that had been left to rot in the earth for centuries. My heart raced as his words sank in. One of them. What did he mean by that? The girl in front of me, her stitched face still contorted in that eternal, sad expression, slowly lowered her hand. The darkness of the forest pressed in tighter, the trees bending like they were closing in on us. I wanted to back away, run, but the pull was stronger now, stronger than ever before. The forest had taken root in my mind, and I could feel it seeping into my bones, claiming me, wrapping around my very essence. I turned back to the man, hoping for some kind of explanation, but he didn't offer any. Instead, he just stared at me with those vacant eyes, his mouth twitching like he wanted to say something more, but the words wouldn't come. A part of me wanted to scream, to demand answers, but another part of me, some darker part, felt strangely calm. The forest had made its claim on me, and I knew that no matter how much I fought it, I was already lost. I took a step forward, drawn to the girl, to the whispering tree. She lifted her head slightly, her stitched eyes meeting mine once again. Her presence was overwhelming, suffocating in its familiarity. I couldn't explain it, but I felt like I had known her for centuries, like I had always been destined to find her in this place. As I stepped closer to her, the air grew colder, the whispers around us rising in pitch. But then, just as I was about to reach out and take her hand, a loud, violent cracking sound pierced the silence. The earth trembled beneath my feet, and the trees groaned as if they were being pulled in every direction at once. My heart lurched in my chest. Something was happening. The whispering tree shook violently, its twisted branches flailing like the limbs of a trapped animal. The girl's face twisted in pain, her mouth opening in a silent scream. The ground beneath us cracked open, and from the depths of the earth, something began to rise. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat, as a dark shape emerged from the chasm that had opened in the ground. It was enormous, a shadow that seemed to devour the very light around us. As it loomed above me, I could feel its presence, its cold, suffocating energy, a power older than anything I had ever known. It was like the forest itself had come to life, a dark god rising from its eternal slumber. The man beside me began to move, stepping away from the girl and the tree, his eyes wide with terror. He reached for me, his hand trembling, his voice breaking as he said, "It's too late. You can't stop it now. You can't escape." The ground beneath my feet cracked again, and I could feel the earth trembling with the weight of whatever had risen. The forest began to scream in a way I couldn't describe, a horrible, unearthly noise that rattled my bones and clawed at my sanity. I could hear the trees crying out, the wind howling in agony. Everything in the forest was alive, and it was all turning against me. I tried to turn and run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, unable to escape, unable to break free from the grip the forest had on me. The darkness around me pressed in, suffocating, and I could hear the whispers louder now. All of them, the voices of the spirits trapped here for centuries. Come to us, join us, be one of us. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but the words wouldn't come. I couldn't breathe. I could barely think. The forest had taken me completely, and I was nothing but a puppet in its grip. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, everything went silent. The forest, the whispers, the cracking earth, it all stopped. The air grew still, and the only sound was the beating of my heart echoing in the deafening silence. For a moment I thought it was over, but then I heard a voice, soft, familiar and sweet. Welcome home. It was her voice. The girl. Her hand reached out to me again, and I knew without a doubt that this was the moment. The moment I had been running from for so long. The moment I had fought so hard to avoid. I took her hand. The instant our fingers touched, the world around me shifted. The ground beneath my feet crumbled away, and I felt myself falling through an endless void. I could feel the forest, the trees, the earth, the spirits surrounding me, pulling me deeper into the darkness. The girl's face was the last thing I saw before everything went black, and then nothing. When I opened my eyes again, everything had changed. The air was thick and damp, heavy with the scent of earth and decay. I was no longer in the forest. The trees, the girl, the whispering tree. Everything had vanished, as if it had all been a twisted dream. But the feeling, the weight of it, that hadn't gone away. I was standing in what appeared to be an old abandoned village. The houses were crumbling, their windows shattered, the walls covered in ivy and moss. The air hung still, like time had forgotten this place. The streets were empty, save for the occasional rat scurrying by and the distant howling wind. There were no birds, no insects, just the silence that seemed to swallow everything whole. I could feel it then, the presence. It was there, lurking in the corners of my mind, just out of sight. It was the same feeling I had when I first stepped into the forest, the same oppressive weight that told me I was not alone. I wasn't sure how I had ended up here, but deep down, I knew this place was tied to the same ancient force that had claimed me. The village seemed to stretch on forever, with narrow alleyways leading off into darkness, each one as deserted as the next. It felt like I was trapped in a place where the passage of time had come to a halt, a place where the living and the dead were indistinguishable. I took a tentative step forward, my boots crunching on the gravel path beneath me. The sound seemed too loud in the heavy silence. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as a cold breeze brushed past me, carrying the faintest whisper of a voice. I spun around, but there was no one there. Just the empty streets, the crumbling houses, and the oppressive sense that I was being watched. I moved cautiously, my eyes scanning every shadow, every crevice, every corner. There was something off about this place, something wrong. The buildings seemed to lean toward me, their broken windows like eyes staring out at me with an empty, hollow gaze. I turned a corner and found myself standing in front of what appeared to be a church. The stone was dark and worn, its once grand doors now hanging loosely on their hinges. A strange symbol was etched into the doorframe, something I couldn't quite recognize, but it seemed familiar, like a memory just beyond my reach. I pushed the door open, the creaking sound echoing through the empty village. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. The pews were overturned, the stained glass windows shattered, casting strange fragmented patterns of light across the floor. In the center of the room, an altar stood, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust, as if it hadn't been touched in centuries. But it wasn't the altar that caught my attention. It was the figure standing at the far end of the church, near the altar. It was a woman, her face obscured by a dark hood, her figure bent in a strange, unnatural way. She stood motionless, as if waiting for me. I felt the pull again, stronger now, urging me forward. My body obeyed before my mind could catch up, and I found myself walking down the aisle toward her, each step feeling heavier than the last. When I reached the altar, the woman slowly raised her head, revealing her face. It was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes, those eyes, were empty, void of any emotion. Her skin was stretched tight over her skull, her mouth a gaping void, as if it had been stitched shut. The sight of her made my blood run cold. She's not human, I thought. This is what they were talking about. The words of the man in the forest echoed in my mind. You're one of them now. But I wasn't ready to accept it. I couldn't be. The woman's lips parted slightly, and a voice, soft, almost melodic, whispered through the air. You've come home. It was a statement, not a question. She didn't need to ask if I was ready, because I had already made my choice the moment I stepped into this cursed place. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stood there rooted to the spot, as if the very air around me had frozen my body in place. The woman moved closer, her feet barely touching the ground, as if she was gliding across the floor. She reached out her hand, cold and lifeless, brushing against my cheek. Don't resist, she seemed to say. It's too late to go back now. The sensation was unlike anything I had ever felt. It was as though her touch had pierced straight through to my soul, her coldness seeping into my very being. It was a feeling of belonging, of inevitability, but deep down, I knew that if I let her touch me, I would lose everything. There would be no return from this. With every ounce of strength I had left, I tore myself away from her grasp and stumbled back. The woman didn't chase me. She only stood there watching with those empty, lifeless eyes. And then, just as I thought I might escape, the ground beneath me began to tremble again. The village around me shook, the buildings creaking and groaning as if they were about to collapse. The whispers started again, this time louder, angrier. They filled my mind, drowning out my thoughts, telling me that it was too late, that I could never leave this place. I turned and ran. The church doors slammed shut behind me as I fled down the dark streets, my heart pounding in my chest. But no matter how fast I ran, I could feel the forest closing in again, its tendrils reaching out to claim me once more. And I knew deep down that there was no escaping the forest's grip. It had marked me, and now I belonged to it. As I ran through the desolate streets, the oppressive silence weighed heavier with each step. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and I couldn't tell if they were coming from within my own mind or from the very air around me. It was as though the world itself was trying to suffocate me with its secrets, each one darker than the last. The village was no longer a place. It was a prison, an endless maze designed to trap anyone who dared enter. I pushed forward, my breaths shallow and ragged, my legs burning from the effort. I could hear the sound of my footsteps echoing off the crumbling walls, but it was the shadows that were closing in on me, not the light. It felt as though I was being hunted, but there was no creature, no person following me, only the weight of the past, the presence of something ancient and unforgiving. Turning a corner, I nearly collided with a figure standing still in the middle of the road. I stumbled backward, heart leaping into my throat. It was a man, tall, gaunt, and draped in tattered clothing. His eyes were hollow like the woman's, but there was something different about him. His gaze was not empty but piercing, as if he could see right through me. You're not meant to be here. His voice rasped, dry as dust. I wanted to respond, to ask what he meant, but the words were stuck in my throat. He took a step forward, his movements unnaturally slow, like he had all the time in the world. Every step he took seemed to make the air grow heavier, thicker, until it felt like I was trying to breathe underwater. Turn back, he whispered, his voice crackling like a fire dying out. You can't outrun what you are. I didn't know what he meant by that, but I knew one thing for sure. I had to keep moving. Without another word, I pushed past him, my body shaking as if a cold wind had suddenly wrapped around my spine. The man didn't stop me. He didn't even try. Instead, he just stood there watching as though he knew this was all inevitable. I didn't dare look back, but I could feel his eyes on me like burning holes into my back. The village was changing with every step I took, the walls closing in the paths, twisting into shapes they hadn't been moments before. It was as if the very ground I stood on was shifting beneath me, turning the village into an endless labyrinth. Every corner I turned brought me back to the same place: the church, the altar, the woman, the man. And still, no matter how fast I ran, I couldn't escape them. The realization hit me like a hammer. This wasn't just a place. This wasn't just some village frozen in time. It was a crossroads, a thin spot in the fabric of reality, where the living and the dead blurred. A place where souls were lost, where people who walked in too deep never found their way out. My heart raced in panic. If I didn't find a way to leave soon, I might never leave at all. I had heard stories about cursed places, about people who vanished without a trace, swallowed by the land, trapped in some eternal purgatory. This felt like that, except I wasn't just lost. I was being drawn in, slowly, relentlessly. A sharp sound echoed ahead, a cracking followed by the distant rumble of thunder. The sky had darkened, even though it hadn't rained. The air had become thick with an unnatural heaviness, as if the very atmosphere was pressing down on me, willing me to surrender. I couldn't let that happen. I had to fight. I had to find a way out. I turned and ran again, my pace quickening with every passing second. The village seemed to stretch endlessly before me, its twisted streets and crumbling buildings making me feel like I was running in place. Then I saw it, a break in the gloom. In the distance, a faint light flickered like a beacon barely visible against the gray sky. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give me hope. With every step, the light grew brighter, and for the first time, I felt something other than the crushing weight of despair. I wasn't sure what the light was or where it led, but I knew it was my chance. It was the only chance I had. As I neared it, I noticed something strange. The ground around me seemed to be changing. The dirt underfoot was becoming soft, almost marshy. The houses around me were falling away, as though the village itself was disintegrating before my eyes. I could feel the air thickening again, but this time it wasn't as oppressive. It was almost welcoming, pulling me toward the light. I reached the source of the glow, a well. The stone walls were worn and cracked, but the light seemed to radiate from within it, illuminating the area around it. It wasn't an ordinary well. It was something older, deeper, like a forgotten portal to another world. I approached cautiously, my hand hovering over the edge. There was something irresistible about the light, something that seemed to call to me, promising freedom, release from the nightmare that had ensnared me. But as my fingers brushed the stone, a jolt of energy surged through me, and the ground beneath me cracked open. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding as I looked down at the chasm that had opened up in front of me. It was a black void, a hole that seemed to go on forever, pulling the world into its depths. The whispers from the village returned louder than ever before, as if the very souls of the place were reaching out to claim me. I had no choice. With one last glance at the flickering light above, I stepped forward and fell into the void. I fell and the world around me dissolved into darkness. But even in that suffocating void, I could feel the pull. Something was guiding me, dragging me deeper into the unknown. It was as if I wasn't alone, as though invisible hands were steering my descent. My body twisted and turned, unable to grasp onto anything, but there was no panic, no fear, just an unsettling calm, like I had crossed some threshold I wasn't meant to. Time lost meaning in that endless fall. I couldn't tell if minutes or hours had passed. My body felt weightless, floating, though I wasn't sure if it was my mind or the environment itself warping around me. I couldn't see, I couldn't breathe, and yet I wasn't suffocating. Then suddenly the world snapped back into focus. I was no longer falling. I landed hard, my knees buckling beneath me, as I hit cold, solid ground. The shock of the impact echoed through me, but I pushed myself up, struggling to regain my balance. My surroundings were pitch black. I could hear nothing. No sounds of life, no wind. Just an oppressive silence that seemed to stretch on for eternity. I reached out my hands, grazing the surface beneath me. It was smooth like stone, but with a strange organic texture. Something about it felt wrong, unnatural, like it wasn't meant to be touched. I recoiled for a moment, unsure of what I had just encountered, but curiosity overcame me. What had I landed in? Cautiously, I ran my hands across the surface again, moving slowly, feeling the coolness and the almost imperceptible vibrations. As I did, something shifted. The ground trembled beneath me, and a distant rumble echoed from somewhere deep within the earth. Then, as though the shadows had awakened, a dim light flickered in the distance, casting long, eerie shadows that twisted unnaturally. The light wasn't bright, but it was enough to cut through the oppressive darkness, offering a sliver of direction. I wasn't sure if it was a blessing or a curse, but I had no other choice. I had to move toward it. I stumbled forward, my legs unsteady, trying to keep my bearings in this strange world beneath the earth. My heart raced in anticipation, and every instinct told me to turn back to escape this place before it could consume me, but my feet betrayed me. They moved on their own, as if they too had been drawn into whatever force had pulled me here. With each step, the light grew stronger, and the air around me grew heavier, as if charged with an electric hum. It wasn't a normal sound, though. It was the sound of something ancient, something older than any living being, vibrating through the walls of this dark, cavernous place. The closer I got, the more I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. Then I saw it. A doorway. A large arching stone doorway, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint sickly light. The air around it shimmered, as if the very fabric of reality was thin here. The light that flickered from beyond the archway was cold, a sickly greenish hue that seemed to twist the very space around it. I stood there frozen, my breath shallow. Every instinct in me screamed to turn around and run. But I couldn't. Something inside me, something deep within told me that this doorway was the key to everything, the key to escape, or perhaps the key to my doom. But as I took another step forward, something changed. A sound. It wasn't just a sound, it was a presence. A deep, guttural growl, as if the very earth had exhaled with a life of its own. It reverberated through the ground beneath me, shaking the air, rattling my bones. It came from beyond the doorway, from somewhere I couldn't see. I froze, my body instinctively jerking back, but it was too late. The door began to shift, as though someone was pushing from the other side. The stone groaned, scraping against the earth with a sound so horrific it made my ears bleed. The light beyond the threshold flickered violently, and then the door swung open, revealing nothing but shadow and mist beyond. But there was something inside the mist, something massive. At first I couldn't make out the shape, but as I squinted, a pair of glowing eyes emerged from the depths of the fog. They were not human, not animal, just raw, malevolent energy staring directly at me. The growl continued louder now, as if the very thing beyond the door was preparing to speak. "Welcome." The voice was deep and resonant, a sound that seemed to fill the entire space around me, vibrating through my chest. It was both an invitation and a warning. You are far from where you began. I felt my body freeze, the coldness of the words sinking into my soul. The air around me grew colder still, as though the temperature was dropping with every word spoken by this entity. But there was something else, something in its presence that made my skin crawl. It wasn't just a being, it was the essence of the place itself. Something ancient, something that had been waiting. "You've come to seek answers," it continued, the voice like thunder. "But are you prepared for the truth? The truth?" That word echoed through me, reverberating in the space around us. What truth? What could this creature know that would justify dragging me into this nightmare? I didn't have an answer. I only had one choice: to move forward into the darkness, into the unknown. The moment I stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the darkness, the door slammed shut behind me with an earth-shaking force. I felt the reverberation in my chest as the sound echoed through the vast, unseen expanse. The air here was thick, unnatural. Every breath felt heavier, as if the atmosphere itself was pressing down on me, suffocating me with an ancient, stagnant weight. I was plunged into complete darkness once more. No light, no sounds, just the oppressive silence that seemed to stretch into infinity. For a moment I thought maybe I had gone mad. This could all be some twisted illusion, a hallucination born from the depths of my own mind. But there was no denying the physical sensation: the ground beneath my feet, the cold air, the vibrations in the walls. It was all too real. Then out of the silence came the voice again. It was closer now, a guttural, echoing whisper that slithered into my ears like an invisible serpent. The words weren't audible at first, but I could feel them vibrating in my chest like a drumbeat. You can't leave. The words were simple, but they felt like a curse. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly as the weight of the statement settled over me. It was a promise, an inescapable fact. The door had sealed shut, and whatever lay beyond it would not let me go. I took a tentative step forward, but the ground beneath me seemed to shift, like I was walking on something unstable, something that wasn't quite real. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, alive, watching me, pulling at me with an unseen force. I wanted to scream, to shout for help, but the air was too thick, and my throat felt tight, as if my voice could never leave my body. Then I saw it, a faint, flickering light in the distance, a pinprick in the void. It was almost imperceptible at first, but it grew steadily brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. The same eerie, sickly green light from before. A cold, unnatural glow that cast no warmth, only shadows. I walked toward it, my feet unsure, reluctant. With each step, the distance seemed to shrink, but the fear that crept into my veins only grew. The light was calling me, but I wasn't sure if it was a lifeline or the trap that would seal my fate. As I neared, the air began to hum, a soft, rhythmic vibration that made my teeth ache. The source of the light was now clearer, a massive stone pedestal, ancient and covered in moss, with strange markings etched deep into the surface. The glow emanated from the pedestal itself, the light seeming to pulse with an eerie life of its own. It was almost as if it was waiting for me. I reached out, a trembling hand drawn to the light, to the stone, but as soon as my fingers brushed against it, the ground trembled beneath me again. The hum intensified, sending shockwaves through my body. I stumbled back, heart racing, but something was pulling me forward. There was no escape. Then a crackling sound filled the air. The light flickered, then split into two, and from the depths of the stone, a figure began to emerge. Slowly at first, just a shadow, barely a shape in the dim light, but then it took form. It was humanoid but wrong. Its body was twisted and contorted in ways that defied nature, like a figure pulled from the darkest depths of a nightmare. The skin was a pale mottled gray, stretched too tight across its bones, and its eyes glowed with the same sickly green as the light. I couldn't move. My body was frozen in terror, my legs betraying me, locking in place. I couldn't look away. It stepped closer, its every movement smooth, but unnatural, like it was gliding rather than walking. "You shouldn't have come," it whispered, its voice soft, but full of malice, like the hiss of something ancient and forgotten. "But now that you're here, you'll stay." The words felt like a death sentence, each syllable laced with the promise of something far worse. The creature didn't stop moving. It was inches from me now, its cold, dead eyes boring into mine. I could feel the weight of its gaze, the crushing presence of something far older than anything human. Suddenly it reached out a hand, skeletal and long, with fingers that seemed to stretch impossibly far. I tried to step back, but my feet wouldn't obey. The thing's hand was closing in, and I could feel the air grow colder, sharper, with every inch it moved closer. Then just before its fingers brushed against my skin, the air around us trembled again, this time with a force that knocked me off my feet. The light from the pedestal flared blindingly bright, and for a moment everything was pure white light. And then, just as quickly as it had come, it was gone. I blinked, disoriented, trying to adjust to the sudden absence of light. My heart was racing and I was gasping for air, but I wasn't alone anymore. The creature, whatever it had been, was no longer there. The pedestal stood in the center of the room, the eerie green glow now dimmed, as if the thing had never existed. But I knew better. I had felt it in my bones. I stumbled to my feet, my body trembling with adrenaline and fear. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what had just happened. The thing, the creature, it was a part of this place. A guardian, maybe, or a trap. I didn't know, but I had no more answers than when I first arrived. And then I heard it again. The growl! The same deep, guttural rumble that had echoed in the distance when I first arrived. It was louder now, closer. The creature wasn't gone. It was still here, waiting for me, watching me. I didn't know how much longer I could survive this place. I didn't know if I would ever leave. But there was only one thing I did know. I had to keep moving. I forced my feet to move, though every instinct screamed at me to stop. The growl resonated through the floor beneath me, a sound so low it shook my chest. It was closer now, too close, and I could almost feel the air stir as something shifted in the shadows. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. It was everywhere all at once, the room itself vibrating with its presence. The darkness seemed to close in thicker now, as if the walls themselves were constricting, urging me to hurry to escape. But I had no idea where to run. This place, this endless, shifting labyrinth of stone and shadow, didn't have a path out. The door was gone. The exit was nothing more than a dream, and all that remained was the oppressive dark. I kept moving, my heart pounding in my ears, every footstep echoing too loudly in the silent void. I could hear my breath shallow, quick, bouncing off the walls, the only sound in the vast emptiness, besides the growls and whispers that seemed to follow me, taunting me, urging me on. I stumbled again. My legs were shaking, too weak to hold my weight, but I gritted my teeth and forced myself onward. Each step felt like a fight against the very air around me. It was as if the space itself didn't want me to leave, like it was drawing me deeper into its clutches. And then the light, a flicker, the faintest glow up ahead, distant but unmistakable. I was too exhausted to feel hope, but there it was, a sliver of something brighter than the oppressive darkness. I stumbled toward it, the need to get closer, to find some form of refuge urging me forward. The growl had quieted for a moment, replaced by a whisper, a soft, almost seductive sound that promised something just beyond my reach. As I drew closer to the light, I realized it wasn't a source of warmth or safety, but a small flickering fire. It sat atop a stone pedestal, just like the one I had seen earlier. This one, though, was different. The fire wasn't a normal flame. It was too still, too perfect, the colors almost unnatural. It flickered in shades of green and black, casting strange, swirling shadows that seemed to move independently, as if they had a life of their own. There was something else, too. A presence. It hovered over the fire like an unseen hand guiding the flames. I didn't know what it was, but it felt wrong, as if the fire was a gateway, a portal to something far darker than I could ever comprehend. The moment I reached out for it, the temperature dropped. It was so sudden, so extreme, I gasped as a chill wrapped itself around me, squeezing the breath from my lungs. The shadows swirled in response, like they had sensed my touch. And then, the voice. It wasn't just the guttural growl anymore. It was a chorus, hundreds of voices speaking in unison, echoing through my skull. Come closer. The voice wasn't from the fire. It wasn't from the shadows. It was everywhere, in the air, in the walls, in my head. I froze, my body stiffening, every nerve on high alert. Something was coming. Something was reaching for me, and it wasn't willing to let me go. The shadows danced closer now, inching toward me with a kind of deliberateness that made my heart race. They moved like liquid, sleek and alive, wrapping around my legs, my arms. I couldn't pull away, my feet were glued to the ground, the air too thick to breathe. My fingers twitched, desperate to grasp something solid, but there was nothing. Only the eerie fire and the encroaching darkness. Then the figure appeared again. No, not the same one, but another. A woman, or at least something that resembled one. Her body was thin, almost skeletal, with skin stretched taut over her bones. Her eyes were empty sockets, black and endless, but her lips twisted into a cruel smile as she drifted toward me. "Don't worry," she whispered, her voice soft, seductive. "You'll join us soon." Her fingers brushed against my cheek, cold as ice, and I flinched, my entire body screaming to pull away, but I was frozen in place, unable to move. I tried to scream, to fight back, but my mouth was dry, my voice a silent scream in the suffocating void. The shadows had taken me, had already claimed me, and I couldn't escape. The woman's smile widened, her face inching closer to mine. Her breath, cold and thick with death, brushed against my skin, sending waves of ice through my veins. "You're ours now," she murmured. And then, as if on cue, the fire flared brighter, its unnatural green light flooding the room, and the shadows rushed toward me, engulfing me, swallowing me whole. The last thing I heard before everything went dark was the voice, no longer a whisper, but a roar. "You'll never leave." And then there was nothing. The silence was unbearable. A thick, oppressive quiet settled in the darkness, and for a moment I wondered if I had died. There was no sound, no movement, just the suffocating weight of the void. I couldn't tell if I was still alive, or if this was the end, a strange limbo between life and death, where nothing existed except the cold, the darkness, and a suffocating sense of doom. But then slowly I began to feel something, an almost imperceptible tug in the air, as though the darkness itself was pulling me in different directions. My body, frozen and weightless, drifted through the nothingness. I had no sense of up or down, no sense of where I was. There was no ground beneath me, no ceiling above, only the sensation of being drawn forward, deeper and deeper. I tried to focus, tried to push against the pull, but it was as if the shadows had woven themselves into my very being, tightening around me with each passing second. The harder I struggled, the more impossible it became to move. I couldn't feel my legs, my arms, or even my face. My entire body seemed to be nothing but a faint echo of something that once existed. I wanted to scream again, but there was no air in my lungs, no voice to cry out. My throat felt raw, dry, as if it had been scraped by something sharp. It was a hollow feeling, like I had been emptied, and now only the endless blackness remained. And then, out of the dark, a sound. It was faint at first, like the scratching of something against stone, a noise so small it barely registered. But it grew louder, closer, growing until it seemed to echo around me. It wasn't a growl this time, but something more. Deliberate, more focused. Footsteps. They were light, almost ghostly, but they were there, unmistakable, moving toward me. The shadows seemed to pulse in rhythm with the sound, as if they too were alive, breathing, waiting. I couldn't see anything, no figure, no source for the footsteps. But they were there. The air felt thicker now, pressing in on me from all sides, suffocating me. The footsteps were louder, faster now, as though something was approaching me with urgency. And then a voice, a low, guttural whisper that reverberated through my skull, sending shivers down my spine. "You're not alone." I didn't need to see the source of the voice to know it wasn't human. It felt ancient, primal, a sound that shouldn't belong to anything of this world. My heart pounded, the fear clawing at my chest, my throat tightening as I tried to make sense of what was happening. I forced myself to think, to focus, through the panic that threatened to overtake me. This wasn't real, I told myself. This couldn't be real. It had to be a nightmare, some strange trick of the mind. But no matter how much I wanted to believe that, I couldn't shake the overwhelming sensation that I was being hunted. The footsteps were closer now, too close. I could almost feel the presence, the weight of whatever was moving through the darkness toward me. It was no longer just an echo, no longer just a sound. It was real. The air seemed to thicken, almost like it was pressing in on me, and my body shuddered involuntarily. I tried to move, but my limbs refused to cooperate. It was as if the very darkness had taken hold of me, rendering me immobile. My mind screamed for escape, but there was nowhere to go. The presence was all around me, pressing in closer with each passing second. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. "Don't run." It wasn't a command, it was a warning. And it made my heart race even faster, because I knew deep down that I couldn't run. There was nowhere to run to. And then, as suddenly as it had started, the footsteps stopped. The presence, the heavy, suffocating force that had been drawing closer, paused, hanging in the air like a predator waiting to strike. The silence returned, but it was different now. It was heavier, charged with an electric tension that hummed through my body. The air around me felt thick, almost like it was alive, and I could sense the weight of whatever it was that was waiting for me. I held my breath, listening for any sign of movement. But there was nothing. No sound, no shift in the air. The darkness felt complete now, inescapable. My body trembled, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It was as if time itself had stopped holding me in place, waiting for something, waiting for me to make the next move. But I didn't dare. I couldn't. Because in that moment I knew whatever was out there, whatever had been stalking me, was not human. It was something else, something older, more powerful and more terrifying than I could ever comprehend. And it was just waiting for me to make the wrong move. I closed my eyes as if shutting myself off from the terror that surrounded me, but even that didn't help. The fear clung to me, heavy and suffocating. It was in the air, in the space around me, and there was no escape. The whispers started again, softer this time, almost sweet. "Come closer." But I didn't. I wouldn't. Not again.